Hi, this is Alex, and I just wanted to give you a brief overview of my presentation on education in Rwanda, focused on the cultural, philosophical, and historical influences on the education system. So I also put this Prezi on the blog, and I think it's probably easier to go through it once you're a little bit familiar with it. So I'm just going to breeze through and show you the different sections, and then you can go back and look at the different videos and links that I've posted as well. Some brief background data. Rwanda is a country of about 12 million people. You can see from the population structure that the vast majority of the population is beneath the age of 24 years old. The languages spoken are Kinyarwanda, which is spoken by pretty much everyone in the country, followed in popularity by French and then English. Education expenditures are about 18% of total government expenditures. There's about 71% literacy in the country. And in terms of ethnicities, Hutus are the dominant ethnicity at 84%, Tutsis followed with 15%, and the Twa minority at 1%. And most of the 44% of the population live at or below the poverty line of about $1 a day. Now, looking at the historical influences on Rwanda's education system, starting back in 1900, looking at the pre-World War II, or actually pre-World War I colonial period, we see that Rwanda was first a colony of Germany and then became a Belgian colony after World War I. The Tutsi were favored by the Belgians and given most of the government positions and heavily favored within the educational system. Their children were favored and given admission to schools. Primarily at this point, the schools were mostly Catholic schools. There weren't that many that were actually run by the government itself. You can see that in 1920 there were 123 schools and 6,000 students, and they were mostly religious, but they received funding from the government. Now, looking at the post-World War II period, after World War II, Belgium was still in power, or still in control of Rwanda. They pledged to improve the education system under UN agreement, but really it remained hampered by inadequate funding. And in 1957, only 3% of children finished 6 years of primary school. In 1960, there were no higher education institutions, and finally, in 1962, the country achieved independence, opened up their education system, and founded the National University of Rwanda. Now, jumping ahead to 1994, this period is probably one of the most well-known aspects of Rwandan history. It's the period leading up to and culminating in the Rwandan genocide. So from 1990 to 1994, there was a civil war between the party in power, which was a Hutu party, and an ousted Tutsi party that wanted to reclaim control of Rwanda, and was based in Uganda and fighting with the National Party in Rwanda. So on April 7th, 1994, the president of Rwanda was assassinated, and this gave license or impetus to the ruling party to launch a premeditated genocide of the Tutsi, which over the course of 100 days culminated about 800,000 deaths. And it wasn't just Tutsis that died. Moderate Hutus were also slaughtered, and the conflict created over 300,000 refugees. It also resulted in many school closures, and as you can imagine, all of the educational institutions within the country were plunged into chaos. So looking ahead to Reconstruction, so in September 1994, Paul Kagame's party seized power. Paul Kagame was the ousted Tutsi leader. Schools began reopening, but many families didn't want to send their children back to the schools because they had been the focus of a lot of the genocidal events that had taken place. So in 1996, when the conflict was officially over, more refugees came back to the country, and the government began working with NGOs to provide education and children's services. But there were still some things in place that had to be eliminated. There had been ethnic quotas, deciding how many students from each ethnicity were able to attend schools, and those were cut. And then there was also a moratorium imposed on history teaching because it had been deemed too detrimental to students' ability to coexist within the school system.